The email notification came at 6:14 inches the morning, when I was still sitting in the hospital parking garage, my right hand wrapped in gauze from the wrist down, waiting for the ibuprofen to kick in. My phone was balanced on my knee, because I couldn't hold it properly yet. The subject line from the SBA loan portal read, "Co-signer withdrawal. Confirmed application status. Under review." I stared at it for a long time. Then I pressed the side button, locked the screen, and drove myself home. That was the morning I stopped being my sister's safety net. And I want to tell you exactly how we got there, because I spent a long time blaming myself for pieces of this story that were never mine to carry. I am 29 years old. I have been doing facial treatments and medical-grade skincare since I was 22, working my way up from a shared booth in a strip mall to my own treatment room inside a med spa in Scottsdale. I am good at my job. My hands are the reason I have a career, the reason I have a wait list, the reason my regulars drive 40 minutes past 3 other spas to sit in my chair. I say this not to brag, but because you need to understand what was at stake the night my sister's fiancé shoved me into a steel prep counter and dislocated 2 fingers on my dominant hand. My sister is 3 years younger than me. After our mom passed when I was 24, it was just the 2 of us. No aunts nearby, no cousins we were close to, just a small 2-bedroom apartment that felt 4 times too big, and a standing Sunday dinner that we kept up because it felt like the one thing holding the shape of our family together. She met her fiancé about 2 years ago. I want to be fair here. In the beginning, I liked him well enough. He was funny in the easy, performative way that reads as charming at dinner parties. He had opinions about everything, which I initially mistook for confidence. My sister was happier than I'd seen her in years, and that mattered to me more than my gut feeling that something was slightly off about the way he talked over her in public and then pretended it never happened. They got engaged 14 months ago. 2 weeks after the engagement, my sister called me crying because they had found the perfect space for the cafe she had been dreaming about since culinary school. It was a corner property in a revitalized part of downtown Mesa, exposed brick, natural light, a commercial kitchen that only needed moderate build-out. The lease was reasonable. The bones were right. The problem was the business loan. My sister had student debt and not enough credit history. Her fiancé had a judgment from a previous landlord dispute sitting on his report. Together, they could not get approved for the amount they needed. The bank needed a co-signer with clean credit, stable income, and collateral. I had all 3. I want to be honest about the conversation I had with myself before I said yes. I knew it was a risk. I knew that co-signing a loan is not a favor. It is a legal obligation that transfers to you the moment the primary borrower misses a payment. I have a friend who lost her car because she co-signed for someone who stopped paying. I knew all of this. But this was my sister. She had a real business plan, a culinary certificate, 3 years of experience managing a commercial kitchen, and a location that made sense. I told myself this was different. I told myself she was different. I co-signed the $90,000 SBA loan. I also contributed $22,000 of my own savings as part of the build-out down payment, the portion the loan didn't cover for equipment and initial inventory. My sister cried when I handed her the cashier's check. She said she would pay me back within 2 years. She said this cafe was going to change everything for both of us. I believed her. What I did not factor in was her fiancé. The first few months of build-out were fine. My sister and I met at the space twice a week. We talked about the menu, the aesthetic, the color of the tile backsplash. It was the closest we had felt since before Mom died. Her fiancé showed up occasionally, always with an opinion, always framing his suggestions as corrections, but I chalked it up to personality and kept moving. Then the scope started expanding. It started small. A higher-end espresso machine than the one they had budgeted for. A custom sign instead of the standard printed one. I noticed it, but said nothing because the amounts were manageable and the decisions were theirs to make. But then her fiancé started showing up to more of the planning meetings, and by month 4, he was the one sending me the update emails. My sister was still there, but she had gone quieter. She smiled and agreed with whatever he said, and when I looked at her across the table, she looked at her phone. The requests escalated. He wanted a full coffee bar built out on the left wall, which required moving an existing gas line, an unplanned cost of about $8,000. He wanted commercial refrigeration units upgraded to a brand that cost nearly double the original spec. He started talking about a potential expansion space next door, before the current space had even opened. I said, very calmly, that we needed to stay within the original budget. He looked at me the way people look at a child who has said something embarrassing at the dinner table. He did not yell. He just smiled and said, "You're not the one running this business. You're just the one who helped us get started." My sister did not say anything. I drove home that night with my hands tight on the steering wheel. Over the next 6 weeks, I started paying closer attention. I had access to the shared project expenses spreadsheet as part of my co-signer documentation. The numbers were drifting. Small overages that, when you added them up, represented almost $14,000 in unplanned spending. Most of it traceable to decisions he had made without consulting the original plan. My sister had signed off on all of it. I requested a meeting. Just the 3 of us, at the space, to review the budget before the final equipment orders went in. He showed up 40 minutes late. My sister showed up looking like she hadn't slept. I laid out the spreadsheet. I said that we were over budget, and that the next round of purchases needed to come back in line with what we had agreed on. I said it calmly. I had rehearsed being calm. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms and looked at me like I was an inconvenience. "We've been meaning to talk to you," he said. "We think the original equipment list is too basic for the market we're going after. We need to upgrade." I asked how they plan to fund the upgrades. He said, "Well, that's kind of what we wanted to discuss with you." I looked at my sister. She looked at the floor. I said no. I said the $22,000 I had already contributed was not a revolving line of credit, and that the loan terms were based on a specific business plan that I had signed my name to, and that if the plan changed materially, we needed to involve the lender. He stood up. He said, "Do you understand what your sister has sacrificed for this? Do you know how long she's worked toward this? And you're going to nickel and dime her over a few $1,000s?" I said, "I'm going to protect my credit score and my legal exposure." "Yes," he said. "Your mom would be embarrassed by you right now." I went very still. I felt my sister flinch across the table. I said, "We're done for tonight," and I picked up my folder. That's when he stepped around the prep counter and put himself between me and the door. Not violently, not yet, just positioning, just making the space smaller. He said we weren't finished talking. I said I was. I tried to go around him. He grabbed my arm, and when I pulled back, he shoved me hard enough that I hit the edge of the steel prep counter at hip height, and my right hand shot out to catch myself on the surface below. 2 fingers bent in a direction fingers don't bend. I heard myself make a sound I didn't recognize. My sister screamed his name. He said, "I barely touched her." She tripped. I was on the floor. My hand was already starting to swell. My sister was standing in the middle of the room looking between me and him, and I watched her make a calculation behind her eyes that I will probably never fully recover from. She walked to him. She put her hand on his chest. She said, "Baby, go outside, okay? Just go outside." He went outside. She came and crouched next to me. She asked if I was okay. She said, "He didn't mean it. He's been really stressed." I looked at my sister's face. I had known that face for 26 years. I had held it between my hands the night our mom didn't wake up. I had watched it change from a little kid's face into a woman's face. And right now, it was asking me to let this go. I said, "I need to go to urgent care." She said, "Do you want me to drive you?" I said no. I drove myself. 2 fingers dislocated, one with a small avulsion fracture at the base. The urgent care doc straightened them, splinted my hand, and told me to see a hand specialist within 48 hours. She gave me paperwork. She gave me a referral. She looked at the way I was holding my arm against my body, and she asked, quietly, if I was safe at home. I said yes. I said it happened at work. I sat in my car for 2 hours after that. My phone had 11 missed messages, 9 from my sister, 2 from her fiancé. My sister's messages ranged from apologetic to defensive to a final one that said, "I really hope you're not going to make this into a bigger thing than it needs to be. He's going to be my husband. Please." Her fiancé's messages both said versions of the same thing. That I had provoked the situation. That I had made things physical first. That he had witnesses. There were no witnesses. The space had been empty except for the 3 of us. I did not respond to any of them that night. I went home. I iced my hand. I lay on my couch and stared at the ceiling and thought about my mother's voice. I thought about what she would actually say if she were here, not the version of her that my sister's fiancé had weaponized to shame me, but the real version. The one who taught me to parallel park and read contracts before I signed them, and call a plumber the first time, not the 4th time, because a small problem ignored becomes a large problem fast. I thought she would tell me to stop waiting for permission to protect myself. I called my hand specialist first thing the next morning. The fracture was minor, and the dislocations had been properly reduced, but she told me I needed to stay out of the treatment room for a minimum of 3 weeks, and that full grip strength might take 6 to 8 weeks to return. 6 to 8 weeks of appointments I would have to cancel. 6 to 8 weeks of income I would not have, because of a shove in a commercial kitchen that my sister had already decided was not worth addressing. I called a friend of mine who I had worked with for years. She had her own suite in the same med spa, and she was the kind of person who showed up to hard conversations with coffee and zero judgment. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "What do you need?" I said, "I think I need to figure out my options." She said, "I know a paralegal." I spent the next 3 days doing 2 things simultaneously. First, I documented everything. The urgent care report, the hand specialist referral, the fracture imaging, the intake paperwork, where I had said the injury happened at a workplace, the text messages from my sister and her fiancé. I backed everything up to a cloud folder. I got a copy of the co-signer agreement and the loan documents and read through them more carefully than I had the first time. Second, I called the SBA loan servicer and asked, very specifically, what the process was for a co-signer to request removal from an active loan pre-disbursement. The loan had not fully disbursed yet. The final $31,000 tranche was still pending because the build-out inspection had not been completed. The servicer explained that because the primary borrowers did not meet the independent qualification threshold, a cosigner withdrawal at this stage would trigger a full application re-review. If the borrowers could not qualify on their own, the remaining disbursement would be withheld, and the application could be restructured or denied. I asked what the timeline looked like for a withdrawal request. She told me. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat with it for one more day. Then my sister called me. I answered because I had been waiting to hear what she would say when she had had enough time to think. I had told myself that if she led with accountability, real accountability, not "I'm sorry you're upset" accountability, I would find a way to move through this with her. She did not lead with accountability. She said she had been talking to her fiancé, and that they both felt I had been increasingly difficult throughout the build-out process. She said that the budget disagreements had created a lot of tension, and that the incident at the space was partly a result of that built-up tension on both sides. She said she loved me, but that right now she needed me to give them some space to focus on the opening, and that she hoped once things settled down, we could talk properly. I asked if she had looked at my hand specialist report. She said she hadn't seen it. I said I had sent it to her 2 days ago. She said she had been busy. I said, "He fractured my hand and you've been busy." She said, "It was a small fracture. The doctor said you'd be fine." I want to tell you that I yelled. I want to tell you that I said something devastating and perfectly articulate that cut right to the center of everything wrong with that sentence. But I didn't. I got very quiet, the way I always get quiet when something shifts permanently. I said, "Okay, I hear you." And I ended the call. I submitted the cosigner withdrawal request the next morning. I did not tell her I was doing it. I know some people will think I should have warned her. I have thought about that, too. But here's what I keep coming back to. She had seen the doctor's report. She had read the word fracture. And she had described it to me as a small inconvenience, while asking me to give her space. She was not in a position where more information was going to change her response. She had already chosen. The withdrawal processed in 11 business days. On day 12, the loan servicer sent a notification to all parties that the cosigner status had changed, and the application was under re-review. My sister called me 47 seconds after that email went out. I did not pick up. She called again. I did not pick up. She texted. "What did you do?" Not a question. A statement. Her fiancé texted me 4 minutes later. "You realize you just blew up everything she's worked for. I hope you're proud of yourself." My sister texted again. "Call me right now. I am serious. You need to fix this." I looked at the messages for a while. Then I opened my email and forwarded the hand specialist report, the urgent care intake documentation, the fracture imaging results, and the complete thread of text messages from the night of the incident, including his 2 messages claiming I had made things physical, first to my sister's email address, her fiancé's email address, and the property manager of the commercial space, who had been CC'd on our lease paperwork, and who I figured deserved to know what kind of situation he had leased his corner property into. Then I turned my read receipts on so they would know I had seen their messages, and I did not respond. The re-review took 9 days. Without a qualifying cosigner, my sister and her fiancé did not meet the independent approval threshold. The final disbursement was denied. Because they had already spent beyond their liquid reserves during the build-out, including the equipment upgrades he had pushed for, they did not have the capital to cover the remaining balance on the contractor invoices. They lost the lease. The deposit they had put down on the commercial space, $18,500, was non-refundable, per the lease terms they had signed, before I came into the picture. They lost all of it. I found out through a voicemail my sister left me at 2 a.m, crying in a way that I recognized from when our mother died. She said I had destroyed her dream. She said she would never forgive me. She said I was a selfish, vindictive person who had been waiting for a reason to hold her back. She said she didn't know who I was anymore. I listened to the voicemail 3 times. The 3rd time, I noticed something. She never once, in 2 minutes and 43 seconds, mentioned his name. She never said he had done anything wrong. She never said she was sorry about my hand. It was entirely about what I had done to her. I saved the voicemail to the same cloud folder as everything else. And then I went to sleep. In the weeks after that, my sister tried 3 more times to reach me through people we both knew. A cousin who called to say she thought we should talk it out. My sister's college roommate who sent me an Instagram DM saying family is family. I responded to none of them. My friend brought me dinner the first Friday. I was back in the treatment room, doing light work with my splint modified so I could manage it carefully. She sat on my treatment table and ate takeout Thai food with me, and told me about a lease she had been considering in a new building 2 miles away, and she asked if I would ever want to go in on a shared space with her. Just the 2 of us. No drama. No one else's name on the paperwork. I said yes before she finished the sentence. We signed the lease 4 months later. It is a clean, quiet space with good light and a waiting area that I designed exactly the way I wanted. My wait list is the longest it has ever been. My hand healed fully by week 10, the specialist said I was ahead of schedule. My sister's fiancé was charged with misdemeanor battery based on the documentation I filed with the Maricopa County non-emergency report line, which I submitted the same week I put in the cosigner withdrawal. The case moved slowly the way these cases do, but it moved. I was told to expect a hearing date. I do not know if my sister attended the hearing. I did not invite her. I have thought a lot about what I owe her, and here is where I have landed. I owe her the truth, which I have always told her. I owe her fairness, which I gave her for years before she decided fair was optional when it applied to me. I do not owe her my financial stability, my professional future, or the use of my hands. I do not owe her a relationship with someone who shoved me into a steel counter and watched her choose him while I was still on the floor. My mother's dying wish was that we take care of each other. I believed in that wish deeply enough to co-sign a $90,000 loan and hand over $22,000 in savings. I believed in it enough to drive 40 minutes to that space twice a week and sit across from a man who talked over my sister in public and pretended it never happened. And I stayed quiet because I thought my presence was holding something together. I understand now that I was not holding something together. I was providing the infrastructure for something that was already broken. Taking care of someone does not mean letting them use your body as a consequence-free zone. Taking care of someone does not mean signing your name to their choices indefinitely, no matter what those choices cost you. My mother was practical. She kept a binder of every insurance policy, every deed, every utility bill, labeled and alphabetized. She would have read those loan documents herself. She would have told me to call the bank. I think she would have understood. The last thing I want to say is about what happened the Sunday after my first week back in the new space. My friend came in on her day off and brought 2 other women from the building, a massage therapist who shares our floor and a woman who does lash extensions in the suite next to mine. None of them had any obligation to be there. We hadn't known each other long enough for it to be an obligation. But someone had brought a speaker. Someone else had brought sparkling water and a cheese board. My friend had printed a little paper sign that said Grand Soft Opening and taped it to the door with painter's tape. I stood in the middle of my own treatment room, with my healed hand holding a glass, surrounded by women who had shown up on a Sunday for no reason except that they wanted to, and I thought about my sister's voicemail. I thought about the word selfish, and I thought, maybe I was selfish, finally, in the way that people mean when they say you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. Selfish, like choosing my career over her convenience. Selfish, like removing my name from a loan taken out by a man who had put me on the floor of a commercial kitchen and called it my fault. Selfish, like deciding, at 29 years old, that the life I was building deserved to survive the people who were careless with it. If that's selfish, I'll take it. I turned the lights on in my new treatment room, and I got to work.